When you think about the executive pressures from the top and the employee realities from below, what do you think are some of those unique challenges that you're experiencing with your clients, you're helping them through when it comes to those people who are in the middle of organizations today?
One of the key components here is that middle organization, typically when they become people leaders at that level, they became that because they were great technically. They get no leadership training, and it is a completely different skill set. And that's where that empathy really comes in. It's like you expect this person to just come in and magically know how to lead people, how to galvanize them around the mission. Resilience doesn't have to come from adversity. It can just come from you challenging yourself. And when you do that, you'll realize how much growth can occur in that time period if you allow it. And then along the way, there were so many serendipitous moments that took place because I was willing to not run from the uncertainty, but confront the uncertainty. Uncertainty is constant. A lot of times we don't recognize that, but uncertainty is constant. If we analyze what we can control versus what we do not control, we will realize that. But once you realize that, you also understand the beauty of being human. The beauty of being human is we can be curious.
My very special guest is the CEO of BrightMind Consulting Group. He's a speaker, coach, and author of 2 books, From Functional to Phenomenal and Own Your Kingdom. He's a Bronze Star recipient and a U.S. Army veteran with expertise in leadership and business strategy. He is Jevon Wooden. Welcome to the show, Jevon.
Hey, I got to have you introduce me every time, man. Appreciate you, man. It's an honor to be here.
It's easy for me to have the energy when I'm talking to you. I loved our earlier conversation. I think we have a lot of shared history, but you've gone and taken it in different directions. You've got some crazy cool frameworks. I'm a big frameworker myself, Jevon. I love it. And so I'm just excited about the conversation.
Yeah, likewise, man. I'm ready to dive in, brother.
Well, you had this journey where you were working IT, so information technology in the Army, and then you've now shifted, if you follow that arc toward where you are today, toward this, what I would call empathy-focused leadership consulting. So I just wonder, that's, you think about a technical field like IT, you think about a military organization like the Army, doesn't really scream human side of the business, but that's where you've landed. I wonder, what kind of led to that transition, your realization that the human side of business is really where it's at?
Yeah, as I looked at my career and at the point where I made this transition, 2016, I was in Afghanistan, and November of 2016, Veterans Day, we were lined up for a 5K run, and a suicide bombing took place. One of the contractors had been there for 5 years, and he was bringing in pieces of that bomb over those 5 years, and he detonated, and it just, not only did it shake our world physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and every other way. I survived. A few of my comrades did not, and it just changed the perspective and what I felt was purpose. Protecting ones and zeros, doing tech and all that stuff was cool, but I didn't feel like I was walking in alignment with what I was supposed to be doing after that. So I was like, what can I do? I Googled it, to be frank, like what's possible. I know I love people. I was told I was good at motivating folks, told I could bring a lot and help people see what they were capable of, even when they didn't think they were. And I Googled, found coaching. After that, someone was like, why don't you speak? Les Brown does it. This person does it. I'm like, you know what? You're right. And I watch these people. Why am I not speaking? And that's how I got to this whole leadership development focus, specifically on empathy and emotional intelligence. Matt, I just realized in those spaces, like you said, they're not known to be empathetic or emotionally intelligent. And I saw what that did to people, not just morale, but people would go home. Like military had the number one cause of death was suicide. Why is that? It's the culture. So I realized the impact of empathy and emotionally intelligent leadership. And that's why my plight today is to impart that into every single person that is in my sphere of influence.
It's such a juxtaposition because people who generally join the military, I mean, we're still in a volunteer situation. People sign up to go into the military. So they have high levels of purpose. Those organizations, you in the Army, me in the Marines, they're very good at what they do, but you still end up with exactly like you said. There's so many veterans who separate and unfortunately either struggle to make the adjustment or you mentioned the suicide rates are just astronomically high. And it's just really challenging to think it would seem like everything's lined up, but the lived experience for veterans and the struggle's real for them as well as just for everybody else too. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the struggle is doubly so because if you think about what happens in the military, as you know, you become this whole collective. Your comrades become your family. You feel like only they understand what you've gone through. So when you don't have that anymore and you come civilian side, like, what is my again purpose? What is my purpose? What am I doing here? It's just not
yeah.
the same.
And it's such a recurring theme. So you had a very dramatic experience with suicide bomber that a lot of people went through values reprioritization during the pandemic. Others, when they have a major transition, like maybe separating from military service, or maybe losing a job, or maybe having a kid, or there's all kinds of things that happen that cause people to look at their life differently. And I give you a ton of credit for listening to that and saying like, what do I want? And going searching and finding somebody like Wes Brown as a speaker. Holy cow! Yeah, that's rarefied air right there. But I love that you're bringing that message and complementing both the hands-on coaching work with the speaking and sharing your message in a kind of a more scalable way. But I know in our conversation we talked a little bit about these. We have a particular empathy for people who are in the middle, kind of in the middle of an organization, for example, when we think about work. And when you think about the executive pressures from the top and the employee realities from below, what do you think are some of those unique challenges that you're experiencing with your clients? You're helping them through when it comes to those people, who are in the middle of organizations today.
Yeah, one of the key components here is that middle organization, typically when they become people leaders at that level, they became that because they were great technically. Like whatever role they had, they were good at that. So they said, you know what? You're a great individual contributor. We're going to have you lead this team. They get no leadership training and it is a completely different skill set. And that's where that empathy really comes in. It's like you expect this person to just come in and magically know how to lead people, how to galvanize them around the mission. Half the time, they don't even know what the goals are of the organization. So that's something, that's why I really have them near and dear to my heart, Matt, because I understand that when you have pressures and you're sandwiched between the two, not only are you trying to communicate up and to communicate in the language of the people, but you also have to be able to communicate down and communicate in the language of the executives. And when you are not provided the resources, the proper resources and the proper messaging, it makes it really, really, really tough. So that's something that I really like to help organizations kind of define. What is the message? What is the why behind anything that we're doing? How do we ensure that the people are empowered to have that autonomy to understand how to do the how, right? Once they know what the what and the why is. So that's really the missing piece oftentimes, and that's where I come in.
I think it's a timeless observation that you're making, which is that we promote our technical experts and we think, this is going to be great for everybody. And then if we don't give them the training, it doesn't turn out to be so great for them. But I think that I haven't been in the workforce 100 years, but I'm sure it goes back that far. But certainly now what we're seeing is there's so much more uncertainty. There's so much change we're absorbing, so much, so fast. Nobody can predict the future. I've seen planning cycles compress into, from years into quarters into months now because things are changing so quickly. And I know that you really talk a lot in your talks you give and the work that you do with clients, all about how to turn that uncertainty into opportunity. And so just can you tell me a little bit, for my listeners here about how that mindset, that philosophy, how should we think about uncertainty that we can't fix, right? But to look at it differently, perhaps in through this lens of opportunity as you teach.
Absolutely. So the beauty about uncertainty, one, uncertainty is constant. A lot of times we don't recognize that, but uncertainty is constant. If we analyze what we can control versus what we do not control, we will realize that. But once you realize that, you also understand the beauty of being human. The beauty of being human is we can be curious. And once we're curious, we'll find that that uncertainty unlocks ways for us to experience and to really set up some ways to learn new skills to become a better version of ourselves. So when I talk about turning uncertainty into opportunity, Matt, I say, okay, what was something that you've been holding off? Maybe I was saying I wanted to learn a new skill for 20 years and I haven't done it. Maybe I was saying that I wanted to start working out and I haven't done it. So what are some of those opportunities in that change that can allow you to become the 2.0 version of yourself? And that goes from the individual level up to that organization. And oftentimes what I find is it's not the uncertainty itself. It's that we have an all or nothing mentality. We're like, oh, I can't control anything. My whole world is going, away because this certain uncertainty, this change is happening. My clear framework, which is what we talk about, is to make it so it makes it manageable. Instead of making it look like you have this whole elephant, which piece can we eat, as so to speak?
Make it a little bit more digestible. One of the things I respect about you most is that you lead by example. And so when I think about your earlier story, when you were first like, I know something's not right. I know I want to make a change, but I don't know what that is. I'm going to go do the research. I'm going to listen to what people are telling me. Hey, you're pretty good at coaching and motivating people. Hey, there's people out there who do this for a living. Hey, there's coaching as a world, that you discovered. So I think that's where that uncertainty that you probably felt a little uncomfortable about, like, I don't know what I want to do, but it's not this, turned into, you know what, I can do this.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I had a period of life. What really, like, every year was something different. Either I was moving somewhere different, I was taking on a new role, I was doing something, I was always changing. And what that taught me was, resilience doesn't have to come from adversity. It can just come from you challenging yourself. And when you do that, you will realize how much growth can occur in that time period if you allow it. And there along the way, there were so many serendipitous moments that took place because I was willing to not run from the uncertainty, but confront the uncertainty. And that's what I just challenge the listeners to do. How can I confront this uncertainty? To not say, how is this happening to me? But what are my opportunities here?
Yeah, it's like they're like beads on a string, right? You can only look back and be like, "Oh my gosh, look at these things all kind of led to this moment or this transformation or this role I'm in now." But in the moment, they're hard to recognize. But I think you're teaching us that if you constantly stay open and curious, use your term from earlier, then this type of transformation, and the answer will emerge, which is pretty cool. But Jevon, you mentioned the clear framework, which I want to dig into here. Clarity is something that it's hard to come by when things are uncertain and murky. So just introduce us to the clear framework and talk about how you're finding it really landing with folks today. Like, what should we be able to take away from it?
Absolutely. When I analyzed decision making, whether it's strategic, tactical, et cetera, what I've done in the military with my troops, all the way into that corporate space in the arena, we often say the word clarity, but it's so vague. It's like, what does that mean for us, for our situation, for our circumstance? And I mentioned it earlier that oftentimes we look at this all or nothing approach. The first step of the clear framework is to clearly define the problem, not holistically, but let's define exactly why this uncertainty or change is making us feel however we're feeling. How can we make it so we break it down so granular that we now know what our next step and what our next move is? And one of the keys to this is, a lot of people are not going to agree with me, we are emotional beings. I don't care how rational you think you are. When something takes place, it triggers an emotion. So we have to go from facts we have to find the facts and kind of put our feelings aside in this step. We have to be unbiased as possible. And a lot of time that's going to take another person to kind of keep us on track and on task. So that clarify the problem is to say, okay, we have this change taking place. We have this uncertainty in place. Could be we're implementing something new, a new technology. You're getting married, whatever. Right? Clearly define the problem. And how you do that is you do what I call a pre-mortem. So a pre-mortem is to say 6 months from now, what could have been the reason why we would fail in this change? Once you identify that, now you can start defining what steps you may be able to take later on in this clear framework. After you do clarity, now you have to label, identify the emotions clearly that you are feeling. We say if we cannot label, we cannot do anything with it. Right? So you have to label the emotion clearly. A lot of times anger and excitement can feel the same. You just feel flushed, you feel hot, you feel this thing, but it could be that you're starting to get excited, but maybe we're unfamiliar with that emotion. Once you label it, once you say, how does this situation make me feel? You got to ask, why am I feeling this way? Does it align with what's happening, what's transpiring in my space? A lot of times, if we did not invoke the change, no matter if it's good for us or not, we're still going to resist the change. It's human. It's the natural thing for us to do, right? Our brain works that way because it wants to protect us, even though we don't have saber-tooth tigers running around anymore. That's just the natural thought. But we have to make sure we are able to cognitively process rather than emotionally process. And then once we can remove those emotions as much as possible, become a little bit more rational and think clearly instead of just responding, we can evaluate, reality check that situation. You want to ask what information or past experiences directly align to this issue. If I am unfamiliar with this situation, maybe someone else knows. We're going to do a fact finding mission here, and we're going to make sure we're tapping into that and high quality testing. We talk about A/B testing often in our space. You got to see, like, give yourself space to experiment a little bit in this evaluation phase. And then you're going to ask, who can help me? Right? Who can or what can help me ensure that my tests are unbiased and rigorous as possible? Once you evaluate, now we can analyze for a list of possible solutions. We've done our hypotheses in academic terms. Now we can analyze and test those hypotheses. What are 3 viable solutions? What are 3 things we possibly can do? And what are the trade-offs for each? This is where that pre-mortem comes into play. Once we identify the trade-offs, let's do it. Let's pick one solution. As long as it's not a catastrophic thing that can take place, I say 80% of facts and information is good enough to take action. We don't need to spend time trying to find that other 20% at this moment. Now you respond, decide, act decisively, do an after action report. What was supposed to happen? What did we expect to happen? What did happen? How can we improve? What can we sustain? And let's keep it moving. And that's the clear framework in essence.
I love how it's so orderly, right? Because the one thing that happens in uncertainty is it feels very chaotic. Like you just don't know what to do. Like you don't have a playbook. And what you're giving us is a playbook that has these memorable steps to them that starts off in the beginning about like, let's not run 100 meters down the road when we don't even know what the situation is. We got to get clear first, right? And then it also strikes me as it balances these cognitive aspects, or I should say maybe the technical aspects of the situation, as well as the human side, the empathy side, the emotional side as well. So it's doing a lot of work, the clear framework is.
Thanks. Yeah. And the cool thing about it is it works whether you're doing an in the moment type of exercise or you're doing something where you're doing like strategic planning, looking for that forecasting. So it's just something that I looked at, Matt, and I was like, okay, what are the components here? How can I make this easier to digest? And I found that this can be implemented in any circumstance or situation, work with a lot of various industries, and they found this very helpful. And it's not abstract. It's something you can actually take action on.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges that I have is that I've always prided myself on coming up with solutions. So inevitably, we'll go back to part of our earlier conversation. When I was a high performer who became a manager for the first time, and I would say that I still do this too often, is jump to solution. I just can't wait to get to the part where we're analyzing data. Like I skipped over getting clear about what the problem even is, or maybe I internalized it, but didn't make sure my team was clear, right? Didn't label because the emotion I was feeling was, we got to get this solved. Where's urgency coming from, right? Or that we didn't necessarily go through some of the the evaluate phase. We just want to go straight to respond.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the natural thing. It's like, I don't need to do all that. Let's just make it happen.
Yeah, we're rewarded for taking action, and even when I was coming up in the ranks, they said Marines have a bias for action. Well, okay, but you skip some steps there. You just go straight to action.
Let's go,
How have you seen this show up, like when you're working with clients and stuff? What risks do we pose to ourselves when we skip steps?
So many, man. This is actually why we mistake strategies and goals to be the same thing. And what I see is someone was take an audacious goal, or we're going to be the best we can ever be in this industry. We're going to be number one. That's not a strategy. A strategy is something that you can implement and execute. So when you just want to respond and make something great and just say things like that, that's one of the risks. Because it's like, okay, how do we make sure we codify that and put it and contribute that to everyone? We need to be able to disseminate what we're talking about. How do we ensure that I'm not just biased towards one thing because I'm the leader and everyone else is just following me? So this is what's going to take into account all the strengths of our teams. If I'm someone, let's take the disc scale. If I'm dominant and I'm someone, I don't need all the information, I'm going to skip finding out, clarifying and labeling and evaluating, and I'm not going to analyze. I just want to respond, like you were talking about, Matt, right? You get in trouble there because if it's something that it could be detrimental to your organization or your situation long term, you're going to be in trouble. You have not tested and you have not looked at what the consequences may be. The other piece to this is you can lose trust. Losing trust because you have not listened to the ideas, you have not analyzed what everyone else thinks may be the solution to this problem. And the benefit of this also is you will have diamonds step up where you haven't given a chance previously. Once you open the floor to say, hey, here's what I'm seeing. I would love to hear, your example of clarifying, for example, what is our problem exactly? And you will find that if you do that in a room of 10, you may get maybe 7 out of 10 will have different answers. And that's why you want to make sure you clarify it collectively, define it, to make sure that everyone's on that same sheet of music. That's where we're losing a lot of folks. And that's why I focus on the managers again, because clarifying is going to look different for the people on the front lines versus the people who are high level strategists. So we have to be able to synthesize all of that and make sure we clearly define the problem as a unit.
Yeah, and I feel like if everybody does it at their respective level or span of control or however you like to think about it, clarity for what we're doing as a functional unit, that's one thing. And that needs to be there because then when we're at the team level, a level down, it's like, okay, what's our clarity for what we own, that part of the bigger picture, but all the way down to the individual. If you're not clear about how your job contributes to the team's success, then you're not clear. And we need to not skip that step. Right?
Absolutely. And you know what I see, Matt, in a lot of organizations, we have those high level 3 goals for the year, or in our high level 3, 5 years, whatever. But I often see that the individual contributor doesn't have goals that are in alignment with the organizations. So how do they ensure that their work is meaningful? How do they feel like they have a clearer definition of what good looks like? They don't know what the standard is. So that is another byproduct of us not getting clear.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times if it's produce this report or produce this widget or whatever, you're like, okay, that's the transactional part. That part I'm clear on. But how does it actually, fill my cup or fit into sort of the bigger picture? We need to connect those. It's our job as managers really to connect those dots for those people. But there's one other thing I wanted to get your take on. So the other thing I see is that a lot of times we get rewarded, for example, promoted based on the results we produce. If all of a sudden you're producing these stellar results, then you're going to get the tapped to, but what I rarely see is somebody get promoted and say, I just want to tell you, you did such a great job of creating clarity for your team, or you did such a great job of labeling when they were going through that emotional response. That never happens. So it's like, we have to recognize that the result is the end product, but we can't skip those steps. We have to do those steps. And if we want to develop future leaders, we have to teach them how to do those steps too. Even if we don't celebrate them the same way, I think that it's important that we recognize that they're prerequisites. There are things that have to happen before we get to the result part that is very visible and easy to celebrate and promote based on.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of the things that I often work with teams is how to communicate with me. Everyone does not communicate in the same way. So that could be giving and receiving feedback. Do I want direct? Do I need you to kind of soften the blow a little bit? What works for me? How do I want to be acknowledged and celebrated? Do I want it in front of the team, or would I prefer one-on-one? Those things are very important to the morale and the effectiveness of your team. If you do not know your people's baselines, you do not know your baseline, it's going to be like speaking 2 different languages to one another. So that's where we're running into a big issue organizationally, and that's leading to us just being results oriented because we don't want to get down into the weeds too much. We don't want to get to know our people well enough where we understand all of that stuff. We don't want to ask them, how can I best recommend or celebrate you? What is meaningful work to you? Where do you see yourself in this organization? What would you like to be? What lights you up? All of those are very, very important to us, not to just be results oriented, but understand we must put people first to get those results.
And that's one thing I think we did get right in the military is that there was always this requirement to get to know your troops, or however you want to refer to that, because inevitably when things got tough, you were going to need that social glue. You're going to need that human connection, that level of commitment. So I think it was always something that carried. And I was surprised when I transitioned to civilian world that it was just not as common, other than probably other high stakes environments like fire service, law enforcement, et cetera. Sports, high performing orchestra, these types of things, you see it. But in the average, company, you wouldn't necessarily see managers other than instinctively getting to know their people at that really deep level.
Yeah, it's because it's oxymoronic to who we are, right? We're told that individual performance is the most important thing. If you think about grade school, the person with the highest grade becomes the valedictorian, second is salutatorian. So all the time we're looking at individual performance. Only when it's convenient when we say, "Hey, come together, be a team. You're going to do this group project." And even in that, what do? We say, "Okay, give us private feedback on who didn't do the work," right? Who didn't pull up their weight. Well, we never asked why, what was going on in their lives. We never saw what was happening to prevent them, if there was a reason or rationale, and how we can support them in that. And that's where the gaps are that I'm finding. It's like I remember being deployed with a team. I had 14 soldiers, and those 14 soldiers, by their prior leadership, I was just assigned for that deployment, but their prior leadership told me they were all misfits. He said they all are horrible in some way. 3 of them shouldn't be in the military because they have behavioral issues. 4 of them can't pass the PT test, and the other ones are not proficient at their jobs. So what did I do with that information, Matt? First of all, I was like, what the hell? Why are they even getting deployed? Like, why do I have to be assigned to them? What am I supposed to do with these 2 people? But then I thought about it. I said, that's one side of the coin. What's the other side saying, which is those 14 soldiers? I spent 15 minutes with each of them when I first got to that unit. And I just asked them, like, why? Why are you here? Why did you sign up? Like you said, it's a volunteer force. Why did you sign up? What do you care about so deeply that you're willing to sacrifice your life? The ultimate thing. What are you sacrificing it for? And what I found was what I used to motivate them to become better. And there's a quote by Naya Rivera: as a leader, we're supposed to help the butterfly see their wings. We're supposed to help them to grow and flourish and fly higher than they thought was possible. And that's where we're missing, man. We're so focused on that outcome that we're not understanding that people, one, we are belonging. We need belonging. We need that just like we need air and water. The second thing is you have to tell people why they matter in that greater whole. If you do not, they'll start drifting and they'll just go through the motions, and then they'll start falling off. Performance falls off, emotions fall off, and then you'll see a shell of them.
I think the most encouraging, liberating thing about what you're sharing with us, these things are absolutely doable, right? Well, I don't care what level we're at. If you're a first line manager, or if you're a seasoned executive, or anywhere in between, you're doing these things. You're raising our awareness to it. You're giving us frameworks to be able to do it. And I find that very empowering, because when you combine these 2 mysteries, the great mystery of how do I actually manage and motivate people, and then the great mystery of how do I operate in an uncertainty, these simple frameworks that are very powerful, they unlock things in our team and in ourselves. I think they're very, they're beyond utilitarian in the sense that they produce great outcomes. They really offer a lot of assurance, which is hard to come by these days. But I don't want to give short shrift to you. I mentioned you're a frameworker, and a 5 why is another one of your frameworks. I know that I've spent so much time covering off on clear, but can you tell us a little bit about 5 why as a framework, and how you came to develop it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I'm like you, Matt. I love a good framework. It just makes everything actionable and memorable. So the 5 why framework is something that I sit and think often. I give myself space for that in my days. And what I realized was, everyone talks about asking someone why 5 to 7 times. And that's how you get past and find the root cause, get off that shallow surface stuff. So I was like, I love using that in my coaching sessions, but I want to take it further. And what I realized was when we do goal setting, for example, what do? We just set the goal. We don't say why that goal is important to us. We don't say, what it will do for us. We don't say any of that. We just say, oh, I want to lose 20 pounds. Well, why? And that first why is the yardstick for you, again, to get really clear and specific on what that goal is, what it would do for it, how it moves the needle for you, how does it tie into who you want to be or the organization you're looking to build. All of that stuff is encompassed in that first why, that yardstick, because we always think about measurements. Well, sometimes if we measure the wrong things, you're going to get some bad outcomes, right? So we have to make sure we're pinpoint on what we're measuring and why it matters. And then that second why is yield. I think of harvesting and crops when I think of yield. I think of growth. You have to plant the seeds first to get the resources. So that second why, when I think of yield, is making space for that those crops to flourish? Do I have the resources to water that seed? Do I have the resources to till the land? And those resources could be people, processes, technology, whatever you want to call it. But it's making sure I have the skills and the resources needed to execute on this goal. If not, what do I need to do? Who do I need to talk with? What do I need to learn? Those types of things come into consideration in that yield piece. The third why is YAR. YAR is a nautical term for being agile, being able to move quickly and pivot without capsizing, so to speak. See those speedboats zoom in on the water? You're like, God dang, how do they not flip over? Because they're YAR, right? They're made for that. That's how we want ourselves to be, and that's how we want our teams to be. So this is about really defining a culture that makes space for us to do that, for us to pivot as needed, for us to make things a little bit easier when we're looking for to accomplish this goal. And there's a sub framework under this called the 3DA success formula: delegate, delete, delay, automate. We already know that we have to do things. That D is out. We don't need to include it. But delegation, many leaders struggle with delegating. We'll say we're great at it, but we never challenge our people. We never give them more responsibility than they are used to. We never say, hey, I believe in you. You're going to take control of this project. Right? So it's very rare to see that. So that's delegation. Something needs to get done, but not by me. Who can I give this to? The leading. We have great ideas as leaders. Fantastic. But a lot of them do not need to be executed. And we just have to do what Warren Buffett said: write down those ideas, and if they don't fall in the top 3, scratch the rest of them. Because we're wasting cognitive load. We're utilizing our brain power for things that will not align with whatever goals we've set in that yardstick. And then there's also that delay. Sometimes something could be good. It could move the needle forward, but we don't have to do it right now. Give ourselves space to say, oh, this falls instead of Q1, maybe it falls in Q4. Maybe it's next year. And that's going to make space for you to be really effective and optimize yourself and your teams moving forward. And then automate, we hear about that all the time. We can, we have tools and AI and all that other stuff. So automating mundane tasks, things that need to get done, but they don't need that human input or interaction. I recommend on this, high touch things that require humanity. Do not automate that. Right? Do not automate that. Have someone do that. Delegate that task. So that's YAR. You want me to keep going, or you want me to pause for a minute? Okay. All right. Perfect. And then yoga. When I think of a yogi, I think of someone who was flexible, who was agile, who could move and fall in and out of a position. Even if they can't access it, they don't get frustrated. They just breathe and move into something else that's accessible for them. We need to be more like that. This is where that resilience becomes very, very important. And this is where that clear framework actually came from. It was like yoga. Oh, wow. To be flexible, we have to do the things we said earlier in clear. We have to ensure that as leaders, we don't have to have all of the answers. And maybe our solution isn't the best solution. Maybe we're missing something here. So you have to be flexible and open enough to change as needed. And then that final why is yearn. Yearn is that longing. It's that feeling that someone just wants to experience what you are offering. And that's what we want as a leader. We want to establish a legacy where those in our charge feel so deeply and care and so inspired by what we have done as a leader that they become better leaders because we led them. And that also goes to clients and customers. They evangelize your product because they love how you make them feel. They love the process. You don't forget about them at any part of the customer journey. They feel like they feel like the only customer. That's how you want people to feel. And then they're going to yearn to be led by you and experience what you offer.
I love it. I love it. Like I said, frameworks are great because they help us to really categorize, bucket, get our head around these complex topics. You've shared 2 very powerful ones with us today, both clear and now 5 why. Jevon, I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, man. Thank you, man. Yeah, this is fun. I was about to say, I can talk, Matt. So I want to make sure that the listeners
we got a lot of shared perspective as well. And to keep us from talking all day, which I would love to do, I do want to shift us over to something I like to do with my guests, which is to have a fun trivia segment. And I saw in one of the articles that was written up about you that you're a voracious reader. So I thought maybe we get a question about great books. So multiple choice question coming our way. Who wrote the American classic novel To Kill a Mockingbird? Is it, I'm a ringer because I actually had to read this in grade school. Is it A, Ernest Hemingway, B, Harper Lee, or C, Mark Twain? So we're going to put our answer in. I know it was Harper Lee.
Harper, yeah.
Yeah, Harper Lee for sure. So audience, if you're playing along at home, To Kill a Mockingbird was written by A, Ernest Hemingway, B, Harper Lee, or C, Mark Twain. That is correct. We got it right. Harper Lee it is. To Kill a Mockingbird, published in 1960, a little bit before my time, but it did win the Pulitzer Prize. So there you go.
Time flies.
I know, time does fly. And our time together flew today too, Jevon. I felt like, again, like high energy, great stuff. You're clearly passionate about it, just like I am. I've really enjoyed the conversation, but I have a better question for you. Where can my listeners go to learn more about you and connect with you?
Man, first and foremost, Matt, thank you so much once again for sharing your platform. You are phenomenal, man. I'm so grateful for this. The listeners, if you would like to connect with me, you just go to JevonWooden.com and you can find everything you ever wanted to know about me. My socials are listed there, my books and everything else that I'm doing. Tell me that you met me on Lead the People, and I would be honored to talk with you.
Awesome. So listeners, I'll have those links in the show notes. You're one click away from getting connected with Jevon, getting deeper into his frameworks, which I clearly love. And Jevon, thanks again for being with us.
My pleasure, man. I'll see you soon.
And thanks to you as well, my listeners, for dialing into all the great stuff that Jevon had to share with us today and investing in yourself. If you got 30 extra seconds, please leave a 5-star rating on Spotify. That's my goal for this year, is to get that up, and also to use the popularity of the show to recruit more great guests like Jevon. So that's it for today. Until next time, don't just manage the business when you can lead the people.